Three.
Hello, family. I just met this beautiful sister. Her name is Kim. And Kim, tell everybody what your nationality is.
Oh gosh, it's a mix. So I have a Caribbean, Arabic, and Polish background,
Oh.
and have lived in the States and Asia and South America and Europe.
And Europe. Okay,
It's like,
wow.
where else do I live?
That's an eclectic mix there. I met her on yesterday when we first got here to Zanzibar, here at the Wareri Beach Hotel. And I so much enjoyed talking to her, and I told her, I said, you sound like a historical scholar. I mean, she knew so much history, and so I was very much impressed. And one of the things we talked about, because she asked me, why are we staying in America? What's keeping us there? And I said, well, family. And then she had the question, she said, well, why are they staying? And so, what was your take on that?
My take is that there's a sort of, and you see this in the cinema coming out now with films like Us and Get Out, there's a kind of entrapment that is not only historic but sociological. You know you need to leave, and you know you need to leave a long time ago. And you don't need to necessarily leave, but you also need to see another world. And America is deeply problematic, but you stay because you believe that it's the least of the problematic world. And you get stuck in kind of this like past and present and imagining future, yet the future's somewhere else in America. And the reality is there's a whole world to see, and especially if you go to Asia or to Africa, places that are actually top down. And then the other escapism is Europe, which is a complete lie. I say this again, Europe is a lie. Stop relying on Europe. And Frantz Fanon also said this too, like stop with the Europeanization, just stop with Europe. There is a future, and Europe is not the future. Europe is a historic colonial delusion that has carried into the future, which is actually decaying as the prices inflate. And the systemic and structural oppression and marginalization and racism that exists in Europe are deeply problematic and actually reflect the, let's say, the mirroring of America in a different way, and they actually blend together. And if you look at their political system and the militarization of their governance structures, they work together, so they also work to reduce each other, to create this binary that you go back and forth to these only two options. And the truth is, like, besides healthcare, and we have a high tax system living in Europe, is that there is another world. I don't get why, especially non-white Americans, keep staying in them, and it's not Canada, and it's not America, and it's not Europe, is that actually you'll find there are, especially in Southeast Asia, if you go to parts of Vietnam, Philippines, Cambodia, if you go there, this whole racism is also structured by the fact that you also seek to find racism, because you get used to being in a space like America where it exists from the day you're born, and you look for it because it feels like home in a way. So it's sort of trauma and sort of linkage to this memory that you can't go anywhere else without your body being the armor of depiction of racism and oppression, that if it's not directly in your face, and so you look for it in these, I hate this term microaggressions, I really hate it because it's not real. It actually is, aggression can happen at all levels, and if it's micro you don't see it. And it's this thing about, you think that you go there and just because you don't see it, you also internalize that it must be something else. And if you can look for that,
You know, we want to say it's micro, but it's very much overt.
And if you look for that elsewhere, why would you continue to stay in a place that you see it visibly, you see it socially, you see it institutionally, you see it in your education, you see it in your class, you see it in everything, and yet you look at the possibility of a place you've never been to and say, I can't be there, even before you've gone there.
Which goes back to what you were saying yesterday. You feel as if it's an entrapment of the mind, an enslavement mentality.
I mean, it's definitely an entrapment. It's just this thing of, and I think it's really interesting to go back to cinema now, what's happening, especially with the films, is that there's this thing of staying to fight a historic battle, and at the same point, what are we fighting for? And I don't know in that sense, and I just think like you'll find life is much less stressful outside of the imperial Western nations. Even when you're working, like the ways we're working in Europe, America, they're stressful, they're just daunting, and you get used to kind of competing for nothing. So in the end, you become the commodity of your own self. And it's like Marx says about the labor. He goes back to labor. Is that the people who do the work, put themselves into the work, and they just become a commodity. They normally become human. In that sense, you're working for what? And in America, what I did find is that once you leave it, I probably think you don't want to go back. And I think once you try something different, maybe you can go back to America with clear eyes and see it. And I look at James Baldwin. James Baldwin said he would die in America. And he said that if I didn't leave America, I'd be dead. And he left with $40 in his pocket, went to France, then found out the reality of racism and discrimination, and then went to Istanbul, and then comes back to France. And then he said at some point, I want to come back to America now because this is the time of Malcolm X, it's the time of a big, strong revolution. And Malcolm X is dismantling a lot of systems that are visibly there. And this is from going to being incarcerated in the prison system and realizing like how fragile your life is when you're racialized. But still, he fights. But what they did is they all leave and they all come back. And they come back with a reality in which I don't have to be here. I'm not stuck here. Because if I go, at least I know what it's like to leave. But if you never leave, you can never go. That's the difficulty. It's like a imprisonment of a society.
Yes. Oh, wow. That was so much just compacted.
It's like a discursive lecture.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. But that is so true. What kind of life is that if you're just fighting all the time? Fighting to be equal, fighting to be treated just as a human. That's no way to live.
It's not a way to live, it's what you get used to it, you know. I think that if you're used to chaos and you're used to violence, you often look for that same thing elsewhere. And then it's also that you're fighting because then at least the illusion of purpose feels there. The illusion, the promise of something, even if it's nothing. But if you have to accept nothing as reality, then the question of your purpose is questioned. What are you living for? And people don't want to face that, so it's better to have a fight, to have a war, to be exhausted because you can at least
fight
and
for
even
that
find
illusion.
in the illusion of hope is that if I keep fighting, maybe. And I'm like, actually, the systems are repeating themselves globally. The same decades you can look at and
just
say,
a cycle.
like the police violence in America didn't raise; it just got on social media.
Right.
The racism in Europe didn't get more public. It just finally was open up to the public, but it's always been there. So the same thing in America, we're just like, this is not new. It's just a new way of reporting the same histories. And we live in histories and we accept histories because we ignore the past. We pretend that we have access to the future, and we yet have to acknowledge the present issues that are wrapped in the history. And for that, you have to fight for the illusion in order to make your purpose exist, in which you're not critical of yourself and your society, and you're not critical of the change that needs to happen. So you keep fighting.
Yes. Wow. That was a wealth of information right there. You heard it from Kim family. Okay, if you won't listen to me, perhaps you'll listen to her.
I hope
Thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.